You're listening to Short History Shorts Audio, where history speaks louder than images. Olympia and the Games. Few words in the ancient world conjure up a more enduring image of athletic glory, religious devotion, and pan-Hellenic unity than the great festival held at the sanctuary of Zeus in the western Peloponnese. The story of Olympia begins long before the first recorded games in 776 BC, for the site itself had been a place of worship and ritual for centuries, perhaps even millennia. Archaeological evidence shows that people were offering sacrifices here in the Bronze Age, long before the Dorians swept through Greece, and that the sacred grove, the Altis, was already a revered space, a meeting point between the mortal and divine. In Greek tradition, the origins of the games were wrapped in myth. One story told of the hero Pelops, who won the hand of Hippodamia by defeating her father, King Oenomaus, in a chariot race, inaugurating the games as a memorial. Another legend spoke of Heracles, the son of Zeus, establishing the contests in honor of his father after completing his labors. These myths served to connect the games to both heroic virtue and divine will, making the festival more than mere sport. It was a sacred duty, a celebration of human excellence offered to the gods. The location of Olympia was remote compared to the bustling centers of Athens or Corinth, lying in the region of Elis, away from the great seas and harbors of Greece. Yet this remoteness worked in its favor, for Olympia became a neutral ground, protected by the sacred truce, the Ekakeria, declared before each games. During this truce, all hostilities between participating states were suspended, allowing athletes, officials, and spectators to travel safely to the festival. In a world as fractured and war-torn as ancient Greece, such a truce was remarkable, a testament to the unifying power of religion and shared tradition. The games themselves were held every 4 years, and this cycle became so important that Greek historians used it as a chronological marker, dating events by Olympiads rather than years. The program of events, really evolved over time. In the earliest period, the only contest was the stadion race, a sprint of about 192 meters, which was roughly the length of the stadium at Olympia. The first recorded victor, all the way back in 776 BC, was a cook named Coroebus of Elis. His name was immortalized in history because of his speed. As the centuries passed, more and more events were added. The Dialos, which was a double-length race, the Dolichos, a long-distance run, wrestling, boxing, the Pancration, a pretty brutal blend of wrestling and boxing with very few rules, and of course the Pentathlon, which was a 5-event contest of running, jumping, discus, javelin, and wrestling. Chariot racing and horse racing, they became really prestigious events, especially for the aristocracy, since the victors were usually wealthy enough to breed and maintain competitive horses. These equestrian contests were actually held in the Hippodrome, a massive course just south of the stadium, where crashes, called naufragia or shipwrecks, were frequent and honestly pretty spectacular. The athletes of Olympia, trained intensely for months before the games, often in their home cities before coming to Elis for a final 30-day training period under the watchful eye of Olympic judges. Participation was open to free Greek men who had not committed sacrilege or serious crimes, and they competed nude, both as a tribute to the gods and as a celebration of the human form. Victors won no material riches, only a wreath of wild olive leaves from the sacred tree of Zeus, but their rewards at home were immense public honors, free meals for life, and statues erected in their likeness. Olympia was as much about religion as it was about competition. The sanctuary's centerpiece was the colossal Temple of Zeus, completed in the mid-5th century BC, which housed the chryselephantine, or gold and ivory statue of Zeus by the sculptor Phidias, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This awe-inspiring image showed the king of the gods seated on a grand throne, holding a figure of Nike, the goddess of victory, in his right hand. Athletes, spectators, and city delegations brought offerings and sacrifices to Zeus during the games, reaffirming the festival's sacred nature. Another important structure was the Temple of Hera, one of the oldest monumental temples in Greece, where the Haraya, games for young women, were held in honor of the goddess. Olympia's political role cannot be overlooked. While the truce promoted peace, the gathering of so many Greeks in one place also made Olympia a center for diplomacy and propaganda. City-states announced alliances, proclaimed treaties, or even declared wars here. Victories in the games were also political capital, especially for cities like Sparta, Athens, and later Macedon, which used athletic success to demonstrate their superiority. Kings and tyrants sponsored athletes or horses to enhance their prestige. Olympia also became a place where Greek identity was reinforced, for participation was limited to Hellenes. Outsiders were excluded, marking the games as a celebration of shared heritage in contrast to the barbarian world beyond. The experience of attending the games was both exhausting and exhilarating. Tens of thousands of spectators traveled to Olympia, braving heat, dust, and overcrowding. There were no seats in the stadium. Spectators stood or sat on the slopes, vying for the best view. Vendors sold food and drink while musicians and poets performed, and sculptors displayed their works. The festival lasted 5 days, filled with processions, sacrifices, feasts, and competitions. For the competitors, the pressure was immense, for cheating was punished severely. Those caught bribing opponents or violating rules were fined, and the money was used to erect statues of Zeus called Zanes, placed at the entrance to the stadium as a warning to future athletes. The prestige of Olympia lasted for over a millennium, surviving the rise and fall of city-states, the conquests of Macedon, and even the dominance of Rome. Roman emperors participated in the games, with figures like Nero famously competing, though his victories were often due to imperial influence rather than skill. Over time, however, the religious core of the festival weakened as the old gods fell out of favor. The last recorded Olympic Games were held in AD 393, when Emperor Theodosius I, a Christian, banned pagan festivals. Without its sacred framework, the festival faded into memory. The sanctuary was later destroyed by earthquakes and floods, its ruins buried until rediscovered in the 18th and 19th centuries by archaeologists. Today, Olympia is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the modern Olympic Games, revived in 1896, take their symbolic flame from the ancient altar of Zeus. The legacy of Olympia lies not only in the athletic ideals it championed, strength, skill, discipline, and honor, but also in its role as a rare unifying force in the fractured Greek world. It was a place where war paused, where men strove for excellence in the eyes of gods and mortals alike, and where the glory of victory could echo down through the ages, in its dust and stones, in the memory of its champions, and in the global tradition it inspired. Olympia remains the eternal stage where humanity runs its greatest race, not just for speed or strength, but for the enduring spirit of excellence